She slapped an old black woman in front of a packed restaurant. Seconds later, her entire career began collapsing. A crowded steakhouse, a rainy night in Dallas, and an elderly black woman wearing a worn-out coat simply asking for a table. What happened next shocked everyone in the room. A staff member publicly humiliated her, judged her by her appearance, and made a decision that seemed harmless in the moment. But there was one thing nobody knew. The woman standing there wasn't who she appeared to be. Before the night was over, a billionaire would walk through those doors. Hidden secrets would come to light, careers would collapse, and a painful act of cruelty would spark a movement that changed countless lives. This is the unforgettable story of Evelyn Carter, the woman they thought didn't belong, and the lesson an entire city would never forget. Rain drifted across downtown Dallas in thin silver lines, turning the city lights into streaks of gold and red. Cars rolled past Crown Oak Steakhouse, their headlights reflecting on the wet pavement like ribbons of liquid fire. Inside the restaurant, everything felt warm, polished, and expensive. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. Crystal glasses sparkled beneath amber lights. The scent of grilled steak, roasted garlic, and fresh bread filled the air. People laughed quietly over wine. Businessmen loosened their ties. Couples leaned close across candle-lit tables. It was the kind of place where nobody expected surprises. And yet, within the next few minutes, every person in that dining room would witness something they would never forget. The front door opened. A cool gust of rain-scented air slipped inside. Several guests glanced up. At first, nobody paid much attention to the woman standing in the doorway. She looked like someone who had wandered in from a completely different world. Her dark coat was old and worn around the sleeves. Her shoes showed years of use. A few faint stains marked the fabric near her cuffs. Tiny flecks of dried paint rested on one shoulder. Drops of rain clung to her gray curls. She paused for a moment, quietly closing her umbrella before stepping inside. Her name was Evelyn Carter, and she was hungry. That was all she wanted. One warm meal, one quiet table, one peaceful hour before going home. The hostess behind the stand started to smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to—" But she never finished. A voice interrupted her, sharp, confident, dismissive. Ashley Morgan. Ashley moved from behind a nearby service station and walked directly toward Evelyn. She wore the restaurant uniform perfectly. Not a wrinkle, not a loose strand of hair. Her smile looked professional from a distance. Up close, it felt colder. Ashley stopped several feet from Evelyn and looked her up and down. Not quickly, slowly, deliberately, the way someone examines an object before deciding whether it belongs. The smile disappeared. "Can I help you?" she asked. Evelyn offered a gentle smile. "Yes, ma'am. I'd like a table for one." Ashley blinked. Then she glanced toward the dining room. Every table looked elegant. Every guest looked polished. Then she looked back at Evelyn. Something changed in her expression. The hostess shifted uncomfortably. Several nearby customers listened without appearing to listen. "I'm sorry," Ashley said. "Are you meeting someone?" "No." "You have a reservation?" "No, ma'am." Evelyn's voice remained calm. "I was hoping to have dinner." Ashley crossed her arms. Her eyes lingered on the old coat, the worn shoes, the paint marks, the simple canvas bag hanging from Evelyn's shoulder. A few diners exchanged looks. One man quietly returned to his meal. Another kept watching. Ashley let out a short laugh. Not loud, just loud enough. "I'm not sure this is the place you're looking for." The words landed harder than they sounded. Evelyn remained polite. "I think it is." Ashley shook her head. "No, I mean, maybe there's a diner a few blocks away." A couple near the bar smirked. The hostess lowered her eyes. Evelyn's smile faded slightly, but her voice stayed warm. I appreciate the suggestion. I'd still like a table, please. For a second, silence hung between them. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The jazz music continued. Ashley sighed dramatically. Ma'am, our guests expect a certain atmosphere. Evelyn looked around. The restaurant was beautiful, but nothing about it frightened her. Nothing about it made her feel small. I understand. Ashley took a step closer. I'm not sure you're understanding. Now more people were watching openly. A server carrying drinks slowed down. A businessman stopped talking mid-sentence. The room could feel tension beginning to grow. Evelyn simply stood there, patient, respectful, quiet. Ashley seemed irritated by that. She had expected embarrassment. Apologies. Retreat. Instead, she found herself staring at a woman who refused to be shaken. I only want dinner, Evelyn said softly. Ashley laughed again, this time louder. Seriously? The sound carried farther than she intended. Heads turned. A few uncomfortable expressions appeared around the room. Evelyn felt heat rising in her cheeks. Not anger. Sadness. She had felt moments like this before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Moments when people looked at her clothing before they looked at her face. Moments when assumptions arrived before introductions. Moments when kindness seemed invisible. Still, she remained calm. I can pay for my meal. Ashley rolled her eyes. Nobody missed it. The hostess looked horrified. Ashley, she whispered. Ashley ignored her. Ma'am, I'm trying to help you avoid embarrassment. The dining room had become strangely quiet. Forks stopped moving. Conversations faded. Even the music seemed farther away. Evelyn drew a slow breath. Why would eating dinner embarrass me? Ashley stared at her. Then something inside her snapped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was arrogance. Maybe it was simply the certainty that nobody would challenge her. Whatever it was, it pushed her one step too far. Ashley moved closer. Far too close. Because people come here to enjoy themselves. Evelyn's eyes met hers. And they don't want... Ashley stopped herself, but the damage was already done. Several people understood exactly what she meant. The silence grew heavier. Evelyn's voice remained steady. What don't they want? Ashley looked around. Every eye seemed fixed on them now. Instead of backing down, she doubled down. The worst choice of her life. Look, Ashley said sharply, why don't you just leave? Evelyn stood her ground. No. The word wasn't aggressive. It wasn't loud. It was simply firm. For some reason, that single word made Ashley furious. Her face reddened. The room held its breath. And then it happened. Ashley raised her hand. Nobody believed she actually would. Not until it was too late. A sharp sound cracked through the restaurant. The entire dining room froze. Evelyn's glasses slipped from her face and struck the floor. A collective gasp swept through the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even Ashley looked shocked by what she had done. For one impossible second, time seemed to stop. Rain fell outside. Jazz played softly, and 50 strangers stared in stunned silence. Evelyn slowly bent down. She picked up her glasses. One lens was slightly crooked. She adjusted them carefully. Then she looked directly at Ashley. Not with hatred, not with anger, not with fear. Something else. Something calmer. Something stronger. And somehow that expression unsettled Ashley more than any scream ever could. Because Evelyn Carter wasn't crying. She wasn't leaving. She wasn't breaking. And before this night was over, everyone in Crown Oak Steakhouse would discover exactly who she really was, including Ashley Morgan, especially Ashley Morgan. But before anyone could understand what had just happened inside Crown Oak Steakhouse, they would have to understand the woman standing in the center of that silence. Because the story did not begin with a slap. It began many years earlier, long before the luxury restaurant, long before the billionaire, long before anyone had ever heard the name Marcus Carter. The rain continued to fall outside the restaurant windows. Inside, Evelyn Carter stood quietly holding her glasses. The scene seemed frozen in place. And then the story drifted backward. Back to the beginning of that same morning. Back to a small neighborhood in South Dallas where nobody cared about designer labels or expensive cars. The kind of neighborhood where old front porches creaked beneath rocking chairs, where children still rode bicycles down cracked sidewalks, where people knew their neighbors by name, where life wasn't easy, but kindness still mattered. At 6 o'clock that morning, before sunrise had fully reached the rooftops, Evelyn Carter was already awake. Golden light from a kitchen lamp spilled across a modest table. A kettle hummed softly on the stove. Outside, the sky remained dark blue. Inside, everything felt calm. Evelyn wrapped both hands around a coffee mug and looked out the window. Her small house wasn't impressive. The paint on the fence needed work. The porch steps had been repaired more than once. The mailbox leaned slightly to one side. But it was home. And after everything life had taken from her, home meant something. Photographs covered one wall of the kitchen. Birthdays, graduations, church picnics, community events, smiling faces. In the center of them all was a framed photograph of a young white boy with bright eyes standing beside a younger Evelyn Carter. The boy couldn't have been older than 10. Both were smiling. Both looked happy. Evelyn touched the edge of the frame with her fingertips. A small smile crossed her face. Then she grabbed her coat and headed out the door. By 7 o'clock, she had arrived at Hope Table Community Kitchen. The building sat beside an aging brick church near a railroad crossing. Nothing about it looked glamorous. The paint was faded. The sign had been repaired several times. The parking lot was uneven. Yet every day people came. Because Hope Table wasn't built on money. It was built on compassion. The back door swung open. Warm air rushed outside. The smell of soup, bread, and coffee filled the morning air. "Miss Evelyn!" A cheerful voice echoed through the kitchen. A teenage volunteer named Jasmine hurried over carrying a box of canned vegetables. "Morning, baby," Evelyn said. Jasmine smiled. "You beat everybody here again. I like the quiet. That's because you're the only person on earth who enjoys being awake before sunrise." Evelyn laughed softly. "Somebody has to make sure this place survives." Within minutes, she was moving through the kitchen, checking supplies, greeting volunteers, helping unload donations, comforting nervous newcomers. The work never stopped, and she loved every minute of it. By 8 o'clock, dozens of people had arrived for breakfast. Some were elderly. Some were veterans. Some were families going through difficult times. Others had nowhere else to go. Evelyn knew many of them by name. She greeted each person like they mattered. Because they did. A gray-haired man named Walter entered carrying an old backpack. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion. Evelyn immediately noticed. "Morning, Walter." He forced a smile. "Morning." "Something wrong?" Walter hesitated. Then he sighed. "My landlord raised the rent again." The words seemed heavier than they should have been. Evelyn listened. Really listened. Not the way people often pretend to listen. The way someone listens when they genuinely care. For several minutes, she stood beside him. No rushing, no judgment, no distractions. By the time Walter sat down with breakfast, some of the worry had left his face. That was Evelyn's gift. She couldn't solve every problem, but she could make people feel less alone. And sometimes that mattered just as much. The day continued. Boxes arrived. Meals were served. Children laughed. Volunteers hurried from room to room. Shortly before noon, Evelyn joined a small team working in a classroom at the back of the building. The room served as an after-school reading center for neighborhood children. Fresh paint covered one wall. A ladder stood in the corner. Drop cloths stretched across the floor. A little boy named Caleb sat nearby drawing pictures while volunteers worked. "Miss Evelyn?" "Yes, sweetheart. Can I ask something?" "Of course." He held up a crayon drawing. It showed a woman wearing a cape. Not a superhero cape. A blanket tied around her shoulders. Above the figure he had written two shaky words. "Miss Evelyn." She smiled. "Who's that? You?" Evelyn laughed. "I'm pretty sure superheroes don't spend their days carrying soup pots. They do if they're helping people." The room burst into gentle laughter. Caleb grinned proudly. Evelyn carefully folded the drawing. Then she placed it inside her coat pocket. She didn't know it yet. But before this day ended, that drawing would become more important than she could imagine. By early afternoon, the classroom project was nearly finished. Blue paint decorated one wall. Bright yellow trim framed the windows. The room felt warmer, brighter, more hopeful. Exactly what Evelyn wanted. Unfortunately, the work left its mark. Tiny paint spots covered her sleeves. A streak of blue marked one shoulder. Dust clung to the bottom of her coat. Her shoes looked worse than ever. She noticed, then laughed. There were more important things to worry about. As volunteers began cleaning up, a woman named Linda handed Evelyn a bottle of water. "You skipped lunch again. I'll eat later. You always say that." Evelyn smiled, "And I'm always right." "No, you're always stubborn." The women laughed together. For a moment, everything felt peaceful, simple, comfortable, the kind of happiness money could never buy. Yet beneath that peace lived older memories. Memories that had shaped Evelyn's life. Memories that explained why she treated strangers with such kindness. There had been a time when she herself had needed help. Years ago, decades ago, back when she was a young black woman trying to build a future. She remembered job interviews that ended the moment people saw her. She remembered landlords who suddenly claimed apartments were unavailable. She remembered standing in places where she felt invisible, or worse, unwanted. Some wounds healed, others never completely disappeared. Instead, they became lessons, and Evelyn had made a choice long ago. She would never pass that pain on to someone else. She would interrupt it, break it, replace it with kindness whenever she could. That choice shaped every part of her life. Around 3 o'clock, the volunteers finally finished for the day. The center looked wonderful. Children would arrive Monday morning to a brighter classroom. Families would have meals. People would have support. Another good day. As Evelyn prepared to leave, Jasmine called after her. "Miss Evelyn." She turned. "What is it?" Jasmine smiled. "Thank you." Evelyn looked surprised. "For what?" "For seeing people." The words landed gently, but they stayed with her, because that was exactly what she tried to do. See people, especially when the world didn't. A few hours later, as dark clouds gathered over Dallas and rain began to fall, Evelyn climbed into her aging car and started driving home. She was tired, hungry, and completely unaware that a single decision was about to change everything. Ahead, Through the rain-swept streets and glowing traffic lights stood Crown Oak Steakhouse, a place she had never planned to visit that day, a place where someone was already preparing to judge her before learning her name, and a place where fate was quietly waiting behind a set of glass doors. The rain grew heavier as Evelyn Carter guided her aging sedan through the evening traffic. Windshield wipers swept back and forth in a steady rhythm. Streetlights shimmered across the wet pavement. Downtown Dallas glowed in the distance like a painting made of gold and glass. Evelyn rested both hands on the steering wheel. For the first time all day, she realized how tired she was. The kind of tired that settled deep into your bones after hours of helping other people. The kind that came with a good day. Her stomach growled. She laughed softly to herself. "All right," she said. "I hear you." She had skipped lunch again. Linda had been right, as usual. A few blocks ahead, traffic slowed near an intersection. Evelyn glanced toward a row of restaurants lining the street. Most were crowded. Others looked closed. Then she noticed Crown Oak Steakhouse. Warm light spilled from its large windows. The parking lot was nearly full. People moved behind the glass carrying plates and wine glasses. It looked welcoming, comfortable, and most importantly, it was close. "That'll do." She signaled and turned. At that exact moment, several miles away, another life was unfolding in a completely different world. 42 floors above downtown Dallas, inside a sleek glass tower overlooking the city, Marcus Carter stood before a conference table surrounded by executives. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched behind him. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Charts glowed on giant screens. Financial reports covered the table. Several investors listened carefully as Marcus finished his presentation. He was 46 years old, tall, confident, sharp-eyed, the kind of man whose decisions could move markets. News networks called him a visionary. Business magazines called him a billionaire. Employees called him demanding. Friends called him loyal. But only one person in the world still called him my boy. That person was Evelyn Carter. Marcus loosened his tie and sat down. The presentation had gone well. Very well. Applause filled the room. One investor smiled. "Marcus, I think this may be your strongest quarter yet." Another nodded. "Congratulations." Marcus thanked them politely, but his attention drifted. He glanced at his watch. Almost dinner time. Without thinking, he reached for his phone, a familiar habit. Every Saturday evening he checked on Evelyn, no matter where he was, no matter how busy life became. The phone screen displayed a photograph, an older black woman smiling beside a garden, his mother. Marcus smiled, a small private smile nobody else noticed. Not one person in that room knew the entire story. The public knew Marcus Carter as the founder of Carter Holdings. They knew his company owned hotels, technology firms, commercial real estate, restaurants, and dozens of other businesses. What they didn't know was how he got there. Most people assumed privilege, opportunity, luck. The truth was very different. Marcus had been 9 years old when tragedy changed everything. His biological parents had died in a highway accident during a storm not unlike the one falling outside tonight. The loss had shattered his world. Relatives argued over responsibility. Lawyers became involved. Nobody seemed interested in the frightened little boy sitting silently in the corner. Nobody except Evelyn Carter. At the time, she had been working 2 jobs, one at a school cafeteria, another cleaning offices at night. She didn't have money. She didn't have influence. What she had was heart. And when everyone else saw a burden, Evelyn saw a child who needed a home. She fought for him, protected him, raised him, loved him. The world would eventually know Marcus Carter as a billionaire. But Marcus never forgot the woman who had once worked double shifts so he could have school supplies. Never forgot the woman who skipped meals so he wouldn't have to. Never forgot the woman who taught him that success meant nothing if you forgot where you came from. A voice pulled him back to the present. "You all right?" His chief operating officer smiled from across the table. Marcus nodded. "Yeah. You looked lost for a second." Marcus glanced once more at the photo. Just thinking about family. Meanwhile, completely unaware of any of this, Evelyn parked near Crown Oak Steakhouse. Rain drummed softly against the roof. She turned off the engine. For a moment she remained seated, watching people enter and leave beneath umbrellas. The restaurant looked elegant, far more elegant than places she usually visited. She almost drove away. Almost. Then another growl came from her stomach. That settled the matter. Evelyn laughed. "Guess we're staying." She grabbed her canvas bag from the passenger seat. Inside were a few leftover classroom supplies, some paperwork from Hope Table, and Caleb's drawing, the one labeled Miss Evelyn. She smiled when she saw it, then stepped out into the rain. The cold air brushed her face. Water splashed beneath her shoes. A passing car sprayed mist across the street. The city smelled of wet concrete and fresh rain. For some reason, she felt peaceful, as though the day had ended exactly as it should. She had no idea she was walking toward one of the businesses connected to her son. Marcus had never talked much about his restaurants. He rarely discussed his wealth around her. Whenever she asked about work, he simply said things like, "Things are going well," or "We're helping a lot of people." That was enough for Evelyn. Money had never impressed her. Character did. Inside Crown Oak, the dinner rush was in full swing. Servers moved quickly between tables. Managers monitored reservations. Bartenders polished glasses. And Ashley Morgan was having a terrible evening. Not because anything had gone wrong. Quite the opposite. Everything had gone exactly the way she wanted. And that was the problem. Ashley had spent years convincing herself she could identify people the moment they walked through the door. Successful people. Important people. Profitable people. People who belonged. She trusted her first impressions more than facts, more than policies, sometimes even more than common sense. Her managers praised her numbers. Customers requested her section. Corporate reports listed her among the highest performing staff in the region. Those successes had created something dangerous. Certainty. The belief that she was always right. Earlier that afternoon, she had glanced through a company newsletter featuring Carter Holdings. The article included a photograph of Marcus Carter. She barely noticed it. To Ashley, billionaires existed in another universe. The image meant nothing. She certainly didn't memorize the family details, didn't read the human interest story, didn't see the small photograph showing Marcus standing beside an older black woman at a community event. The woman smiling beside him. The woman named Evelyn Carter. If Ashley had paid attention that day, everything might have been different. But she hadn't. And now fate was steering both women toward the same moment, toward the same doorway, toward the same decision. Back outside, Evelyn adjusted her coat and crossed the parking lot. Rain slid from the edge of her umbrella. Warm light spilled through the restaurant windows. Laughter drifted faintly through the glass. She could already imagine a hot meal, a cup of coffee, maybe even dessert. For the first time all day, she was thinking about herself. Just a little. The front entrance stood a few yards away. Beyond those doors waited comfort, food, rest, and a secret connection no one inside could possibly imagine. A connection tied to the name Carter. A connection tied to ownership. A connection that would soon turn an ordinary Saturday night into a story people would remember for years. Evelyn climbed the final step, reached for the brass handle, and opened the door. The moment she stepped inside, Ashley Morgan looked up and immediately decided exactly who she thought Evelyn Carter was. She could not have been more wrong. The restaurant door closed softly behind Evelyn. Warm air wrapped around her like a blanket after the cold rain outside. For a brief moment, she simply stood there. The scent of grilled steak drifted through the dining room. Jazz played from hidden speakers. The glow of hanging lights reflected off polished wood and crystal glasses. It should have felt welcoming. Instead, something in the room shifted the second Ashley Morgan looked at her. The young hostess behind the podium offered a polite smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Crown Oak." But before she could continue, Ashley stepped forward. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. The hostess immediately fell silent. Ashley folded her arms. Her eyes traveled from Evelyn's worn shoes to the paint-speckled coat, then to the canvas bag hanging from her shoulder, then back again. The look lasted only a few seconds, but Evelyn had seen looks like that before, the kind that made decisions before conversations ever began. "Can I help you?" Ashley asked. The question sounded polite. The tone did not. Evelyn smiled gently. "Yes, ma'am. I'd like a table for one." Ashley didn't answer right away. She glanced toward the dining room. Several tables were open. Not many, but enough. Then she looked back at Evelyn. "Do you have a reservation?" "No." Ashley nodded slowly. "Are you meeting someone?" "No." A pause. "Just dinner?" "That's right." Ashley let out a small laugh. Not loud, not quite rude enough to be called rude, but enough. The hostess looked uncomfortable. A nearby server pretended not to listen. Ashley tilted her head. "I'm not sure this is what you're looking for." Evelyn remained calm. "I think it is." Another pause. Longer this time. Ashley felt irritation rising. Most people backed away when she made them uncomfortable. This woman wasn't moving. The confidence bothered her, especially because she couldn't understand where it came from. Ashley had built an entire worldview around appearances. Appearance told you everything, or so she believed. Successful people looked successful. Important people looked important. People who belonged looked like they belonged. That simple equation had worked for her for years. At least she thought it had. So when she looked at Evelyn, she saw only old clothes, old shoes, an inexpensive bag, nothing more. Certainly not someone she believed belonged at Crown Oak. "I'm trying to save you some embarrassment," Ashley said. Evelyn blinked. "Embarrassment?" "Yes." Ashley gestured vaguely around the room. Several guests now openly watched. A businessman lowered his wine glass. A woman near the window exchanged a look with her husband. Nobody spoke. "We're a fine dining restaurant," Ashley continued. "I can see that." "It's not exactly—" Ashley searched for words. "Casual." Evelyn smiled slightly. "I noticed." Ashley felt herself losing control of the conversation. Nothing she said seemed to shake the older woman. No anger, no fear, no apology. Just calm. The kind of calm that made insecure people nervous. At a nearby table, an elderly couple watched closely. The husband frowned. His wife quietly whispered something in his ear. Across the room, a young busboy named Noah emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of clean glasses. He noticed the tension immediately. Everyone did. Ashley stepped closer. "Maybe there's another restaurant nearby." "I'd still like a table." The answer came gently, respectfully, firmly. Something about that firmness hit Ashley the wrong way. The room seemed smaller, hotter, more crowded. She hated being challenged, especially in front of customers. "Ma'am," Ashley said, forcing a smile. You seem like a nice lady. Noah nearly rolled his eyes. Whenever Ashley started a sentence that way, it never ended well. But? Evelyn asked. The word hung in the air. Ashley hesitated, then continued. But our guests expect a certain atmosphere. Several people looked down at their plates. One man visibly cringed. The sentence landed exactly the way Ashley intended. Evelyn understood that. So did everyone else. Still, she refused to lose her composure. For a brief second, she thought about leaving. Not because Ashley frightened her, not because she felt ashamed, but because she was tired. The day had been long. The confrontation felt unnecessary. Then she remembered Walter at Hope Table. She remembered Jasmine. She remembered all the people who spent their lives being quietly pushed aside. And she realized something. Leaving wouldn't make Ashley kinder. Leaving wouldn't challenge the assumption. Leaving would simply make the moment easier for everyone except the next person. So she stayed. Not out of anger, out of dignity. I only want dinner, Evelyn said. The statement was simple, almost impossible to argue with. Ashley knew it. That made her even more frustrated. A few customers began whispering. The hostess shifted nervously. Noah remained frozen near the kitchen entrance. Something told him he shouldn't walk away. Something important was happening. Ashley took another step forward. The professional smile disappeared completely. Her voice lowered. Look, I'm trying to be nice. Evelyn met her eyes. So am I. For a moment, neither woman moved. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The jazz music continued. A server carrying a tray stopped halfway across the room. The entire restaurant seemed to be waiting for one of them to back down. Ashley wasn't going to, and Evelyn wouldn't, because for Ashley, this had become a matter of control. For Evelyn, it had become a matter of self-respect. Neither realized how much was about to change. Ashley finally crossed her arms tighter. Her patience was gone. Her irritation had become something sharper, something dangerous. And in that moment, she made a decision. A decision she would replay in her mind for years. A decision that would cost far more than she could possibly imagine. She looked directly at Evelyn Carter. Then she said the words that made several people in the room go silent. Ma'am, I think it's time for you to leave. The dining room froze, because everyone could feel it. The situation had just crossed a line, and neither woman was turning back. Not now, not anymore. For a long moment, nobody in Crown Oak Steakhouse moved. The rain continued outside. Jazz drifted softly through the speakers. A waiter stood frozen beside a table holding a tray of drinks. A businessman stared at his untouched steak. Even the hostess seemed unable to breathe. Ashley Morgan had expected many things. An argument, a complaint, maybe tears. What she had not expected was the quiet. Evelyn Carter stood calmly beneath the warm restaurant lights. Her old coat still carried faint traces of paint from the community center. A few drops of rain glistened on the fabric. Her canvas bag rested against her side. And despite everything that had happened, she remained composed. Ashley mistook that composure for weakness. It was a mistake. The kind of mistake people make when they have spent too long judging others by appearances. You need to leave, Ashley said again. Her voice was louder now, sharper, designed to establish control. Evelyn looked at her. The older woman's expression held neither fear nor anger, only disappointment. The sight unsettled Ashley more than she cared to admit. Around the dining room, customers exchanged uneasy glances. A middle-aged woman seated near the fireplace lowered her menu. Her husband leaned forward slightly. Neither said a word. but both continued watching. Near the kitchen entrance, Noah remained motionless. The tray he carried felt suddenly heavy. His grandmother had raised him. The woman who taught him right from wrong. The woman who always said that dignity mattered more than pride. Looking at Evelyn reminded him of her. Something twisted in his chest. Ashley took another step forward. "Evelyn, is it?" she asked. The question carried none of the respect usually attached to someone's name. Evelyn nodded. "That's right." Ashley crossed her arms tighter. "I think we're done here." "No," Evelyn said quietly. "We aren't." The words landed with surprising weight. Ashley blinked. A few customers straightened in their chairs. The older woman continued. "I came here to have dinner." Ashley laughed. A short, bitter sound. "You're serious?" "Yes." The hostess looked down at the floor. The embarrassment in the room was becoming impossible to ignore. Not because of Evelyn. Because of Ashley. Yet Ashley couldn't see it. Or refused to. Years of getting her way had created a blind spot. One large enough to hide the truth standing directly in front of her. "I don't understand people like you," Ashley muttered. The statement slipped out before she could stop it. The room instantly grew colder. Several diners exchanged uncomfortable looks. A server quietly turned away. Noah felt his jaw tighten. "People like you." The words hung in the air. Everyone heard them. Everyone understood them differently. But nobody missed them. Evelyn's eyes softened. Not because the comment didn't hurt. It did. Because comments like that always hurt. No matter how many years passed. No matter how strong you became. There was always a sting when someone reduced a human being to a category. A stereotype. A quick assumption. Evelyn had experienced it before. She remembered being denied opportunities, ignored during meetings, followed around stores, dismissed before speaking. The memories had never completely disappeared. But neither had her faith in people. She still believed most people were capable of better, including Ashley. Especially Ashley, because beneath every cruel action lived a choice, and choices could change. "I don't think you know anything about me," Evelyn said softly. Ashley rolled her eyes. "I know enough." Noah felt something shift inside him. The conversation wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was wrong. And everyone knew it. The problem was that nobody wanted to be the first person to step forward. Nobody, except perhaps one young man standing near the kitchen. A few feet away, Rachel Bennett watched from behind the service station. Rachel was one of the assistant managers. 38 years old, professional, observant, and increasingly disturbed. She had seen Ashley push boundaries before. Not like this, but enough to recognize the pattern. Several months earlier, Rachel had filed concerns about Ashley's behavior. Nothing formal, nothing dramatic, just concerns. Each time corporate leadership praised Ashley's performance numbers and moved on. Now Rachel watched the consequences unfold in real time. Ashley had crossed a line, and she seemed completely unaware of it. The silence stretched. Then Ashley made another mistake. She reached for Evelyn's shoulder. Not aggressively, not forcefully, but with the clear intention of guiding her toward the door. The gesture stopped just short of contact. Because Evelyn took a small step backward, the movement was calm, respectful, deliberate, and somehow that made Ashley even angrier. "I said, leave." The words echoed through the dining room. Evelyn glanced around the room. She saw faces, concerned faces, embarrassed faces, curious faces, a room full of strangers watching a moment none of them had expected. Then her gaze settled on Noah, only for a second. The young man quickly looked away, but something passed between them. Recognition. Not of identity, not of status. Recognition of humanity. One person seeing another. That brief moment gave Noah courage. He slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and pressed record. Not because he wanted attention, not because he expected fame, because something inside him said this moment mattered, because sometimes the truth needs witnesses. Across the room, Ashley noticed none of it. Her attention remained fixed on Evelyn. "I don't know why you're making this difficult." Evelyn smiled sadly. "Neither do I." The answer struck harder than an insult, because it was true. Ashley opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. For the first time all evening, uncertainty flickered across her face. Just for a second, gone almost immediately. But there, beneath the confidence, beneath the arrogance, a tiny crack, a whisper of doubt. What if she was wrong? The thought surfaced, then vanished. Ashley pushed it away. Too late. The crack remained, and cracks have a way of growing. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Rain continued falling against the windows. Inside, Noah kept recording. Rachel kept watching. The customers kept listening. And Evelyn Carter remained exactly where she was. Not because she wanted conflict, not because she wanted revenge, but because some moments require a person to stand still, to refuse humiliation, to refuse disappearance, to quietly say, "I belong here too." The room felt different now, less like a restaurant, more like a crossroads. Everyone sensed it. Something important was happening. Something larger than a disagreement over a dinner table. Ashley could feel it too, which was why she suddenly wanted the situation over, immediately, before it slipped beyond her control, before anyone asked difficult questions, before anyone learned who Evelyn Carter truly was, and before fate finally caught up with both of them. Because just a few miles away, in a glass tower overlooking Dallas, Marcus Carter was about to finish his meeting. And within the hour, everything would begin to change. But inside Crown Oak Steakhouse, nobody knew that yet. Not Rachel, not Noah, not the customers, and certainly not Ashley Morgan, the woman who still believed she understood exactly who Evelyn Carter was. She was about to discover how wrong she had been. The dining room remained suspended in a strange silence. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The jazz music continued, but now it felt distant, almost unreal. Ashley Morgan stood with her arms crossed, trying to project confidence, trying to convince everyone in the room, including herself, that she was still in control. Evelyn Carter looked at her quietly. Not with anger, not with resentment, not even with disappointment anymore. Instead, there was something else in her eyes. A calmness that Ashley couldn't explain and couldn't stand. Most people reacted when they were humiliated. Most people raised their voices. Most people fought back. Evelyn had done none of those things. That unsettled Ashley far more than any argument could have. "Ma'am," Ashley said sharply, "this is getting ridiculous." Evelyn said nothing. Ashley continued, "I've asked you several times to leave." Still nothing. The silence forced Ashley to hear her own words, and for the first time, they didn't sound nearly as reasonable as they had in her head. Near the fireplace, an elderly man slowly set down his fork. His wife leaned closer. "I don't like this," she whispered. Neither did anyone else. The mood of the restaurant had changed completely. People were no longer wondering whether Evelyn belonged there. They were wondering whether Ashley did. Noah continued recording. The phone trembled slightly in his hand. Not from fear, from nerves. He had never recorded anything like this before, but every instinct told him not to stop. Rachel stood behind the service station. Her expression grew more serious by the second. She had seen warning signs for months. Now those warnings were unfolding in front of dozens of witnesses. Ashley pointed toward the entrance. "The door is right there." Evelyn finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Ashley." The younger woman stiffened. The fact that Evelyn used her name somehow felt personal, uncomfortable. "What?" For a moment, Evelyn simply looked at her, really looked at her. Not the uniform, not the attitude, the person underneath. When she finally spoke, her words were quiet enough that several people leaned forward to hear them. "Are you sure?" Ashley frowned. "What? Are you sure this is how you want to treat someone?" The question landed differently than anyone expected. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't even an accusation. It sounded sincere, as though Evelyn genuinely wanted Ashley to think about the answer. The room grew still. Ashley blinked. For a split second, uncertainty crossed her face. Then pride rushed in to cover it. "Excuse me?" Evelyn adjusted her glasses. One side still sat slightly crooked from hitting the floor earlier. Yet somehow that small imperfection only made her appear stronger, more human. "You seem like someone who works hard," Evelyn said. Ashley stared. "You don't know me." "No," Evelyn agreed. "I don't." Another pause. "But I know that every choice becomes part of who we are." The words settled over the room. A server stopped walking. A customer near the bar lowered his drink. Even Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. Ashley laughed, but this time the laugh sounded forced. "You think you're teaching me a lesson? No?" Evelyn shook her head. "I think life teaches all of us eventually." Outside, thunder rolled across the city. A flash of distant lightning illuminated the windows. Ashley suddenly felt exposed, as though every person in the restaurant could see the crack forming beneath her confidence. She hated that feeling. So she did what she always did. She pushed harder. "You don't belong here." The sentence came out before she could stop herself. Several diners visibly winced. The words sounded worse now than they had before, because everyone could hear what was really being said. Evelyn lowered her eyes briefly. Not because she believed Ashley, because the statement hurt. Simple as that. No matter how kind a person was, no matter how much wisdom they carried, words still mattered. For a moment she thought about all the years behind her, the jobs she worked, the sacrifices she made, the children she helped, the families she comforted, the community she served. And now, after all of it, a stranger had reduced her entire life to a single judgment based on appearance. The sadness of that realization settled heavily inside her. Yet when she looked up again, her expression remained calm. "If that's what you believe," she said quietly, "then I'm sorry." Ashley stared. "What are you sorry for?" Evelyn's eyes softened. "Because it must be exhausting." Ashley frowned. "What must be exhausting?" "Living in a world where you decide who matters before you've even met them." The room went silent again. Not because the words were loud, because they were true. Ashley opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time all evening, she had no immediate response. Across the room, Noah felt chills run down his arms. Rachel looked away for a moment. Several customers exchanged glances, and somewhere deep inside Ashley, something uncomfortable began to stir. Not guilt, not yet. Something smaller, the first shadow of doubt. The kind people spend years trying to avoid, because once doubt appears, certainty becomes impossible. Ashley hated uncertainty. She hated feeling wrong. Most of all, she hated feeling judged, which was ironic, because judging people had become second nature to her. The irony was completely lost on her. Finally, she forced herself to speak. "You need to leave." The sentence sounded weaker now, less convincing. Even she seemed to hear it. Evelyn looked toward the rain-covered windows, then back at Ashley. No. Not angry, not loud, simply certain. A murmur moved through the dining room. The balance of the room had shifted. Ashley could feel it. Customers who had remained silent now seemed sympathetic toward Evelyn. Employees who once avoided eye contact were watching openly. The situation was slipping away from her, and she knew it. That realization frightened her more than she would ever admit, because control had always been her greatest comfort, and for the first time in years, she no longer had it. Evelyn reached into her coat pocket. Slowly, carefully. Ashley tensed. Several people looked concerned, but all Evelyn pulled out was a folded piece of paper. Caleb's drawing. She looked at it for a brief moment. The crayon image of a woman wearing a cape. Miss Evelyn. My hero. A small smile touched her lips. Then she folded it again and placed it back inside her pocket. The gesture seemed insignificant, yet Noah couldn't stop thinking about it. Who carried a child's drawing around like that? Someone who cared. Someone who loved. Someone very different from the person Ashley imagined. And for the first time, Noah wondered something. Who exactly was Evelyn Carter? The answer was coming, faster than anyone realized, especially Ashley Morgan. Because within the next few minutes, Evelyn would step outside into the rain and make a phone call, a very short phone call. Just 4 words. 4 words that would set everything in motion. 4 words that would bring an entire world crashing into Crown Oak Steakhouse. And when that world arrived, nothing inside the restaurant would ever be the same again. For several seconds after Evelyn slipped Caleb's drawing back into her pocket, nobody spoke. The silence felt heavier than before. Ashley stood rigidly near the hostess stand. Noah kept recording. Rachel watched from across the dining room. The customers remained frozen between curiosity and discomfort. Outside, rain streaked down the tall windows. Inside, something had ended, and something else had begun. Evelyn looked around the room one last time, not at the chandeliers, not at the polished wood, not at the expensive artwork hanging on the walls. She looked at the people, the young hostess who seemed ashamed of what she had witnessed, the elderly couple near the fireplace, the servers pretending to stay busy, the nervous customers avoiding eye contact. She saw something familiar, not cruelty. Fear. Fear of speaking up, fear of getting involved, fear of becoming the next target. She understood that fear. Most people weren't bad. Most people simply wanted peace. Unfortunately, silence often protected the wrong person. Evelyn adjusted her coat. Then she turned toward the door. Ashley frowned. "Where are you going?" Evelyn paused. "Outside." Ashley crossed her arms. "Good." The word came out faster than she intended. A few customers exchanged looks. The older gentleman near the fireplace shook his head. His wife sighed quietly. Evelyn opened the door. Cool air swept through the restaurant, rain-scented and fresh. For the first time all evening, she felt able to breathe again. The door closed behind her. The sound seemed louder than it should have. Noah lowered his phone slightly. "Should we do something?" he whispered. Rachel stared toward the entrance. I don't know. But deep down, she already knew. Something about Evelyn Carter didn't fit the story Ashley had created. Something important was missing. Outside, rain fell steadily across the parking lot. Streetlights reflected on the wet pavement. Cars moved slowly through the evening traffic. The city hummed around her. Evelyn walked across the sidewalk and sat beneath the shelter of a nearby bus stop. Water dripped from the edge of the roof overhead. A neon pharmacy sign flickered across the street. The night felt strangely peaceful. Her cheeks still stung faintly. Her heart felt heavier than she wanted to admit. Not because of Ashley. Not entirely. Because moments like this reminded her that some wounds never completely disappeared. You could spend a lifetime helping people, a lifetime serving your community, a lifetime showing kindness. Yet sometimes all it took was one stranger looking at your clothes to decide who you were. Evelyn stared at the rain. Then she reached into her pocket. Her phone felt cool in her hand. For a moment she hesitated. She almost didn't make the call. Marcus was busy. He always had responsibilities, meetings, travel, decisions affecting thousands of people. She hated interrupting him. Then she remembered something. Years ago, when Marcus was 13, he came home after being bullied at school. He had tried to pretend everything was fine, tried to carry the burden alone. Evelyn had sat beside him and said something he never forgot. You don't have to carry pain by yourself. Now those words returned to her. Slowly, she found his name in her contacts. Marcus. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Then she pressed call. Miles away, the meeting inside Carter Holdings headquarters was wrapping up. Executives gathered documents. Investors exchanged handshakes. Assistants prepared schedules. Marcus stood beside the window overlooking downtown Dallas. Rain shimmered across the glass. His phone vibrated. He glanced down. The moment he saw the name, he smiled. Mom. No matter how important the meeting, no matter how many people surrounded him, he always answered. Immediately. The call connected. Hey, Mom. For a second, there was only the sound of rain. Then Evelyn spoke. Her voice remained calm, steady, controlled. But Marcus knew her too well. He heard something underneath it. Something wrong. And then she said the words. Marcus, Mom got hit. Silence. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Silence. The kind that follows a sudden shock. Marcus straightened immediately. Every conversation in the room seemed to disappear. The executives noticed the change at once. His expression hardened. Not with anger, with focus. The kind of focus that appeared when something truly mattered. Are you hurt? No. Where are you? Crown Oak. The answer hit him like lightning. Crown Oak, one of his restaurants. For a moment he thought he had misunderstood. Then reality settled into place. His voice became very quiet, the kind of quiet that made people listen carefully. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. Stay right there. Nothing else, no questions. No explanations. Just certainty. Evelyn smiled faintly. All right. The call ended. Marcus lowered the phone. The room had gone silent. 20 people stared at him. No one spoke. His chief operating officer finally cleared his throat. Marcus? He turned. The warmth usually visible in his expression had vanished. Not replaced by rage. Something colder. Determination. I need everything on Crown Oak Steakhouse. The executive blinked. Everything? Everything. The room sprang into motion. Assistants grabbed laptops. Phones appeared. Messages flew across corporate networks. Within seconds, people were searching employee records, management reports, security contacts, and regional operations files. Marcus walked toward the elevator. No one tried to stop him. They had seen this side of him before. Not often, but enough to recognize it. One executive hurried alongside him. "Do we know what happened?" Marcus pressed the elevator button. "No." The doors opened. He stepped inside. "But we're about to find out." Back at Crown Oak, Ashley Morgan believed the situation was finally over. She returned to work, or at least tried to. Yet something felt wrong. The dining room hadn't recovered. Customers remained quiet. Conversations felt forced. Several tables requested their checks early. The atmosphere had changed. Ashley noticed, and hated it. She blamed Evelyn. Rachel blamed Ashley. Neither said it aloud. Near the kitchen, Noah reviewed the video he had recorded. His stomach tightened. Watching it again somehow felt worse. The humiliation, the assumptions, the way Evelyn had remained calm throughout all of it. Noah looked toward the rain-covered windows. He wondered who she was. Not her job, not her income, not her status. Who she was as a person. Because the woman in that video looked stronger than anyone else in the building. Meanwhile, beneath the bus shelter across the street, Evelyn sat quietly watching the rain. Cars passed. Headlights reflected on the pavement. The city carried on as though nothing unusual had happened. Yet somewhere in Dallas, a chain reaction had already begun. Executives were making calls, phones were ringing, drivers were changing routes, schedules were being canceled, and a son was coming for his mother. Neither Ashley Morgan nor anyone inside Crown Oak Steakhouse understood what was happening. Not yet. But within the hour, black SUVs would pull into the parking lot. Old assumptions would collide with reality, and every person who had witnessed that evening would discover the truth about Evelyn Carter. A truth far bigger than money, far bigger than status. A truth built from decades of sacrifice, love, and quiet dignity. The storm outside was growing stronger, and so was the one heading toward Crown Oak. Rain hammered against the restaurant windows now. The soft drizzle from earlier had become a steady downpour. Water rushed along the curbs. Headlights blurred into streaks of white and red. Inside Crown Oak Steakhouse, however, the weather wasn't what people were talking about. They were talking about Evelyn Carter. Or rather, they were trying not to. The dining room had never quite recovered from what happened near the hostess stand. The laughter was gone. The easy conversations had disappeared. Even the jazz music seemed strained. Customers spoke in hushed voices. Servers moved carefully between tables. Every person in the building felt the same uncomfortable truth. Something had happened here. Something wrong. And nobody could pretend otherwise. Ashley Morgan tried to continue working. She carried menus, checked tables, spoke to customers. But the confidence that usually surrounded her was beginning to crack. People looked at her differently now. Not openly, not dramatically, just enough for her to notice. And once she noticed, she couldn't stop noticing. Near the kitchen entrance, Noah sat on an overturned supply crate during a short break. His phone rested in his hands. The video remained on the screen. He had watched it 3 times already. Each viewing made him feel worse. Not because of what happened, because of how normal it seemed to Ashley. That was the disturbing part. Nothing about her behavior suggested surprise. Nothing suggested regret. It felt practiced, as though she had done versions of this before. The thought lingered, then grew. Finally, Noah stood up. There was one person he needed to talk to. Rachel Bennett. He found her in a small office beside the kitchen, Stacks of paperwork covered the desk. A computer screen glowed softly. Rain rattled against a nearby window. Rachel looked exhausted. Noah closed the door behind him. "Can I ask you something?" Rachel looked up. "Sure." He hesitated, then held up the phone. "Has Ashley ever done anything like this before?" Rachel didn't answer immediately. That silence told Noah more than words ever could. Slowly, she leaned back in her chair. The years seemed to settle across her face. "Why are you asking?" "Because that didn't feel new." Rachel stared at him for several seconds. Then she sighed. A long, weary sigh. "The answer you want?" Noah nodded. "The honest answer?" "Yes." Rachel folded her hands. Then no. It wasn't new. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside the office, Noah felt his stomach tighten. Rachel looked toward the closed door, making sure nobody could hear. Then she spoke. "About 8 months ago, there was an older black couple celebrating their anniversary. Noah listened. They arrived early, dressed nicely, very polite." Rachel paused. Ashley told them their reservation couldn't be found. "But they had one?" Rachel nodded. "Confirmed reservation." "What happened?" "They left." Noah frowned. "That's it?" "Not exactly." Rachel's expression darkened. 10 minutes later, a walk-in party arrived. "White?" Rachel nodded again. They got seated immediately. Silence filled the room. Noah stared at her. Rachel continued. "There was another incident." "How many incidents?" Rachel laughed bitterly. "More than there should have been." The answer told him everything. She opened a desk drawer, removed a thin folder, placed it on the table. Noah stared. "What is that?" "My notes." "You kept notes?" "I had to." Rachel opened the folder. Inside sat printed emails, written reports, dates, names, descriptions, months of concerns, months of warnings, ignored. Noah flipped through them. Each page felt heavier than the last. A veteran denied service after arriving in work clothes. A family treated differently than other customers. Complaints about comments. Complaints about assumptions. Complaints about behavior. All pointing toward the same person. Ashley Morgan. Noah looked up. "You reported this?" "3 times. What happened?" Rachel laughed again. The sound contained no humor. Corporate praised her sales numbers. Noah shook his head. "That's insane." "I know." "Nobody did anything?" "No." Rachel stared at the folder. "Every time I raised concerns, I heard the same thing." "What?" "Ashley produces results." The words lingered. Ugly. Familiar. The kind of excuse people use when convenience matters more than character. Noah felt anger rising. Not explosive anger. The slow kind. The kind that settles deep. "What about tonight?" Rachel looked toward the rain-covered window. Tonight changes things. Noah wasn't so sure. People with power often escaped consequences. He had seen it before. Yet something felt different this time. Maybe it was Evelyn. Maybe it was the video. Maybe it was the look on Rachel's face. Whatever it was, certainty seemed to be shifting. Across the dining room, Ashley finished speaking with a customer. She noticed Rachel's office door closing, noticed Noah walking away. A flicker of unease touched her. Tiny, almost invisible. She ignored it. Instead, she focused on work, on control, on normalcy. Unfortunately, normal was becoming impossible. Because stories have a strange way of finding each other. And tonight, Several stories were beginning to collide. Back in the office, Rachel continued reviewing old reports. As she worked, a memory surfaced. One she hadn't thought about in months. A former employee named Carlos. Carlos had once confronted Ashley after hearing her make assumptions about a customer. The argument became heated. Not dramatic, just honest. Carlos had told management what happened. 2 weeks later, he was transferred. A month later, he quit. Rachel remembered how defeated he looked, how frustrated, how tired. The system had worn him down, and now she wondered how many others had walked away the same way. Not because they were wrong, because they were ignored. The realization made her sick. Near the front windows, several customers paid their checks and left early. Not because of the food, because the atmosphere felt wrong, heavy, uncomfortable. One elderly woman paused before leaving. She approached the hostess stand. The young hostess looked nervous. "Can I help you, ma'am?" The woman glanced toward Ashley, then back. "That older lady who was here earlier." The hostess nodded. "Is she all right?" The question caught her off guard. I think so." The woman smiled sadly. "I hope so." Then she left. The hostess watched her disappear into the rain. For reasons she couldn't explain, guilt settled in her chest. She hadn't done anything wrong. Yet she hadn't done anything right either. That realization hurt. Meanwhile, several miles away, information continued flowing into Marcus Carter's phone. Reports, names, employee files, incident logs, management structures. Every minute revealed more. And Marcus didn't like what he was seeing. Not one bit. Back at Crown Oak, Noah's phone buzzed. A notification. Someone had already shared a portion of the video with another employee. Then another. Then another. The footage was spreading, quietly, internally, like a spark moving through dry grass. People were watching. Questions were forming. And for the first time, Ashley Morgan was no longer controlling the narrative. The truth was beginning to speak for itself. Outside, headlights suddenly appeared through the rain. Large vehicles. Dark vehicles. Several of them. They turned into the Crown Oak parking lot one after another. Noah noticed first. Then the hostess. Then Rachel. The engines idled beneath the storm. Black SUVs, 3 of them, parked directly in front of the restaurant. The dining room slowly grew quiet again. People turned toward the windows. Ashley frowned. What now? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Not yet. But something about those vehicles felt important. Intentional. Powerful. The front doors had not opened. The passengers had not stepped out. Yet. Rain cascaded down the windows. The engines continued running. And every person inside Crown Oak felt the same strange sensation. Something had arrived. Something big. Something that was about to change everything. And somewhere beneath the bus shelter across the street, Evelyn Carter looked up and saw the first SUV pull into view. A small smile touched her face, because she knew exactly who had come, and why. Rain poured across the Dallas streets as Evelyn Carter sat beneath the bus shelter. The neon pharmacy sign flickered across the wet pavement. Water rolled from the edge of the shelter roof in steady streams. Traffic moved slowly through the storm, and across the street, 3 black SUVs idled in front of Crown Oak Steakhouse. To everyone else, they were just expensive vehicles. To Evelyn, they were a familiar sight. Marcus never traveled alone when business was involved. Security teams insisted on it. Corporate advisors insisted on it. Investors insisted on it. But to Evelyn, the man stepping out of the center SUV wasn't a billionaire. He was still the little boy who used to scrape his knees riding bicycles. The little boy who cried when thunderstorms scared him. The little boy who once brought home a stray dog because he couldn't bear to see it alone. The rear passenger door opened. A tall figure emerged. Dark overcoat, tailored suit, broad shoulders, purposeful stride. Marcus Carter. Rain immediately soaked his coat. He didn't seem to notice. Two security personnel stepped out behind him. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Marcus's attention was already focused across the street. On the bus shelter. On the woman waiting there. Inside Crown Oak, dozens of eyes followed the scene unfolding beyond the windows. Customers stood from their tables. Servers stopped working. The hostess leaned forward. Rachel walked toward the front entrance. Even Ashley Morgan found herself staring. Something about the man's arrival unsettled her. Not because she recognized him immediately, because everyone else seemed to. A businessman near the bar suddenly whispered, "Oh my God." His wife looked confused. "What?" The man pointed. "That's Marcus Carter." Three nearby customers turned instantly. Another customer pulled out his phone. Within seconds, several people were searching online. Faces paled, eyes widened, whispers spread across the room. Marcus Carter, founder of Carter Holdings, technology billionaire, national business figure, television interviews, magazine covers, conference keynote speaker, one of the most recognizable executives in Texas. Ashley frowned. The name sounded familiar. Then realization hit. Not completely. Not yet. Just enough. Her stomach tightened. Outside, Marcus crossed the street through the rain. He didn't hurry, but he moved with purpose. Every step seemed deliberate. His shoes splashed through shallow puddles. Water dripped from his coat. The city noise faded into the background, because there was only one thing that mattered. His mother. Evelyn looked up as he approached. The moment their eyes met, the tension in Marcus's face softened. Not completely, just enough. The way it always did around her. Mom. The word carried years of love, years of gratitude, years of history. Evelyn smiled. "Hello, sweetheart." Marcus immediately knelt beside her, not caring about the rain, not caring about the expensive suit, not caring who might be watching. The billionaire CEO knelt beside the older woman in the worn coat. Just a son checking on his mother. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "Did they hurt you?" Evelyn hesitated. The pause answered the question. Marcus looked at the slightly crooked glasses, the faint redness on her cheek, the damp coat, the exhaustion in her eyes. Something inside him hardened. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder, more controlled. The kind of determination that built billion-dollar companies. The kind that changed outcomes. Behind him, the security team remained silent. They exchanged brief glances. They had worked with Marcus for years. They recognized that look. Someone inside Crown Oak was about to have a very difficult evening. Back inside the restaurant, whispers multiplied. Customers crowded near the windows. Phones appeared. Conversations overlapped. Ashley's confidence began slipping away. She walked toward Rachel. "What is happening?" Rachel looked at her. For several seconds she said nothing, then quietly replied, "You really don't know?" Ashley felt her stomach sink. No. She didn't. Not fully. Not yet. Outside, Marcus helped Evelyn stand. The rain continued falling around them. He gently adjusted her glasses. The same way she used to fix his collar before school. The same tenderness. The same care. The gesture nearly brought tears to the eyes of several people watching through the restaurant windows. Evelyn smiled softly. You always worry too much. Marcus shook his head. Not when it comes to you. The answer came instantly, without hesitation, without embarrassment. Evelyn patted his hand. I'm all right. Marcus glanced toward Crown Oak. The warm lights glowed behind the glass. The restaurant suddenly looked different. Not welcoming, not elegant, not successful. Just small. Very small. What happened? Evelyn took a breath, then calmly explained. No exaggeration, no anger, no revenge. Just facts. The way she had always taught him. Tell the truth. Let the truth do the work. Marcus listened quietly. The more he listened, the more still he became. By the end, rain was dripping steadily from his coat sleeves. His expression revealed almost nothing. That frightened people more than anger would have. Inside Crown Oak, the front doors opened. Rachel stepped outside. The rain immediately soaked her jacket. She approached carefully. Mr. Carter? Marcus turned. Rachel swallowed hard. The stories about Marcus Carter were legendary. The negotiations, the business deals, the intelligence, the discipline. Yet standing in front of him now, she noticed something else. Concern. Real concern. Not for a company, not for money, for his mother. I'm Rachel Bennett. Marcus nodded. Assistant manager. I know. She blinked. Of course he already knew. Corporate had likely provided every employee file during the drive. Rachel took a breath. Mr. Carter, what happened tonight shouldn't have happened. Marcus studied her face. Unlike many people, he paid attention when others spoke. Really paid attention. Rachel continued. I filed complaints before. That got his attention. What kind of complaints? About Ashley. The rain seemed louder suddenly. Rachel looked toward the restaurant windows. A lot of us tried. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. Tried. We were ignored. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Marcus asked a simple question. Do you have documentation? Rachel nodded. Yes. Good. One word. Nothing more. Yet Rachel felt immediate relief. For the first time in months, someone was actually listening. Inside Crown Oak, Ashley watched everything unfold. Fear had finally arrived. Real fear. The kind that appears when reality collides with assumptions. She watched Marcus standing beside Evelyn, watched the concern, the affection, the respect. And suddenly a terrible possibility entered her mind. Who was this woman? Not what was her job, not how much money she had. Who was she? The answer came moments later, because Marcus turned toward the restaurant, toward the dozens of people watching, toward the employees standing frozen behind the glass. And before entering, he did something Ashley would never forget. He wrapped his arms around Evelyn, held her tightly, and said one simple word. Mom. The entire restaurant seemed to stop breathing. No movement, no conversation, no sound except the rain. Ashley felt the blood drain from her face. The hostess covered her mouth. Noah stared in disbelief. Several customers gasped. The billionaire owner of Carter Holdings, the billionaire owner of Crown Oak, the man whose photograph appeared in business magazines across America, had just called the woman Ashley humiliated Mom. And in that instant, Ashley Morgan finally understood exactly who Evelyn Carter was. The realization hit like a collapsing wall. Because the woman she dismissed, the woman she mocked, the woman she ordered out of the restaurant, the woman she humiliated in front of strangers, was not just another customer. She was the mother of the most powerful man in her professional world. And Marcus Carter was walking toward the front door. Rainwater dripped from the edge of his coat as he climbed the steps. Behind him, the two security professionals followed at a respectful distance. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The atmosphere inside Crown Oak Steakhouse had already changed. The front doors opened. Cool air swept into the dining room. Conversations stopped completely. Marcus Carter stepped inside. Every eye followed him. The soft jazz music continued overhead, but it felt strangely disconnected from reality now, as though the restaurant itself didn't realize everything had changed. Marcus stood still for a moment. His gaze moved across the room. Not hurried, not emotional, methodical, observant. The way successful people learn to read a room. The way leaders learn to identify truth before anyone speaks. He saw nervous employees, uneasy customers, faces avoiding eye contact, faces watching him carefully, faces carrying guilt, fear, regret. And then his eyes found Ashley Morgan. She felt it immediately. The moment his gaze settled on her, the same confidence she had worn all evening vanished, not all at once, piece by piece, like a building losing its foundation. Marcus didn't raise his voice, didn't point, didn't accuse. He simply looked at her, and somehow that felt worse. Ashley swallowed. Her mouth had gone dry. For the first time all night, she wished she could disappear. Marcus walked forward. Every step echoed softly against the polished floor. No one moved. No one spoke. Near the kitchen entrance, Noah continued recording. His heart pounded. The video already felt important. Now it felt historic. Rachel stood nearby, arms folded tightly. She had spent months hoping someone would finally listen. Now someone was. A very powerful someone. Marcus stopped near the hostess stand. Ashley forced herself to speak. "Mr. Carter." The words came out weak, small, nothing like the confidence she displayed earlier. Marcus didn't respond immediately. His eyes drifted toward the crooked glasses Evelyn still wore, then toward Ashley again. Only then did he speak. "What happened here?" The question wasn't loud, but it carried through the entire restaurant. Ashley opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. It was a misunderstanding. Several customers visibly reacted. One man shook his head. Rachel looked away. Noah almost laughed from disbelief. A misunderstanding. Marcus remained expressionless. "Explain." Ashley's thoughts raced. For the first time in years, she couldn't find the right words. Because every explanation sounded ridiculous now. Every excuse sounded hollow. She tried anyway. She came in during a busy shift. Marcus waited. "And?" Ashley hesitated. "I thought..." The sentence died. Marcus took a step closer. "What did you think?" Silence. The answer sat between them. Ugly. Obvious. Impossible to defend. Ashley stared at the floor, because saying it out loud would expose everything. The assumptions, the judgments, the prejudice hidden beneath professional language. Marcus already knew. Everyone did. Still, hearing it would have made it undeniable. Ashley couldn't bring herself to do it. Across the room, an older customer finally spoke. "I saw what happened." Heads turned. The man slowly stood. His wife beside him nodded. Marcus looked toward them. The man continued. "Your mother asked for a table." The restaurant remained silent. That's all she did. Ashley closed her eyes. The story was slipping away from her, no longer hers to control. Another voice joined in. A woman near the window. She was polite. Then another. A businessman near the bar. Very polite. Then another. The hostess. Quietly. Almost trembling. She never raised her voice. One by one, witnesses began speaking. The truth no longer belonged to a single person. It belonged to the room. Marcus listened, carefully, without interrupting. Ashley felt panic rising, because every new voice stripped away another layer of protection. Every statement narrowed her options. Every memory contradicted her excuses. Then Noah stepped forward. The room instantly focused on him. The young kitchen assistant held his phone in one hand. His nerves showed, but he didn't back down. I recorded it. The sentence landed like thunder. Ashley's face lost all color. Rachel closed her eyes briefly. Finally. Noah held up the phone. I recorded everything. Marcus looked at him. Everything? Noah nodded. From the beginning. The silence that followed seemed endless. Then Marcus extended his hand. May I see it? Noah handed over the device. The restaurant collectively held its breath. Marcus watched. The video played. Every word, every expression, every assumption, every moment. No edits, no commentary. Just truth. The room watched him watching. Ashley stared at the floor, unable to look. Rachel watched Marcus carefully. The deeper into the video he went, the quieter he became. That frightened her. Not because he seemed angry, because he seemed disappointed. Disappointment from someone like Marcus Carter carried weight. The video ended. The screen went dark. For several seconds, Marcus said nothing. The silence became unbearable. Finally, he handed the phone back to Noah. Thank you. Just 2 words. Yet Noah felt 10 pounds lighter. Someone had listened. Really listened. Marcus turned toward Rachel. You mentioned documentation. Rachel nodded. I have copies. Bring them. She disappeared immediately. Ashley felt her heartbeat accelerating. The room suddenly seemed too warm, too bright, too small. The walls felt closer, the exits farther away. For the first time all evening, she saw herself through everyone else's eyes, and she hated what she saw. Not because she felt innocent, because she didn't. Deep down, she knew exactly why she had treated Evelyn differently. She just never expected consequences, never expected accountability, never expected the woman in the worn coat to matter. That realization hit harder than anything else, because the truth was ugly. She hadn't changed her behavior after learning who Evelyn was, only her fear. The distinction haunted her. Rachel returned carrying the folder. The same folder Noah had seen earlier. She handed it to Marcus. He opened it. The restaurant remained silent. Pages turned. Dates, reports, employee concerns, written complaints, ignored warnings. Marcus read everything. His jaw tightened. Not dramatically, just enough. Each page revealed another missed opportunity, another ignored warning, another moment where someone could have acted and didn't. Ashley watched him read. Each page felt like another door closing. The room felt increasingly surreal, like a dream none of them could wake from. Marcus finally closed the folder, slowly, carefully. Then he looked at Rachel. How long? Rachel understood the question immediately. Almost a year. Marcus nodded once. A full year. A year of complaints. A year of warnings. A year of inaction. The realization disturbed him more than the incident itself. Because systems fail before individuals do. Someone had allowed this. Someone had ignored it. Someone had protected results over character. That would be addressed. Soon, very soon. Ashley stared at the floor. The collapse had begun. She could feel it. Everything she built. Everything she believed about herself. Everything she thought she controlled. Cracking beneath her feet. And the worst part wasn't losing status, or position, or reputation. The worst part was finally understanding who Evelyn Carter truly was. Not a billionaire's mother. Not a powerful connection. Not an important name. A good woman. A genuinely good woman. The kind of person Ashley should have treated with respect from the beginning. The kind of person she failed to see. And that realization hurt more than any professional consequence ever could. Marcus looked toward the front entrance. Through the glass, he could still see Evelyn waiting beneath the bus shelter. Patient. Calm. Unbothered by status. Unchanged by power. Exactly the same woman who raised him. Exactly the same woman who spent Saturdays helping strangers. Exactly the same woman Ashley had dismissed. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. And for Ashley Morgan, everything was falling apart. Rain continued to fall outside Crown Oak Steakhouse. The storm that had rolled across Dallas earlier showed no signs of slowing. Water streamed down the tall windows. Thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the city skyline. Inside the restaurant, however, a different kind of storm had reached its peak. No one was eating anymore. Half-finished meals sat untouched. Wine glasses remained forgotten on tables. Every person in the room was watching the same thing. Ashley Morgan. The woman who had spent the evening believing she understood exactly who belonged inside Crown Oak. Now she stood alone near the hostess stand, staring at the floor. Not because someone forced her to, because she no longer knew where else to look. Marcus Carter remained calm. That calmness somehow made the moment more powerful. He wasn't shouting, wasn't humiliating her, wasn't demanding revenge. He simply stood there holding a folder filled with ignored complaints and a phone containing video evidence. The truth was doing all the work. Rachel stood nearby. Noah remained near the kitchen entrance. The hostess watched with nervous eyes. Every customer had become a witness. Ashley felt exposed, not because people were judging her, because they finally saw her, really saw her. The assumptions, the arrogance, the choices. For years, she had hidden those things beneath professionalism, beneath sales numbers, beneath customer service language. Now there was nowhere left to hide. Marcus finally broke the silence. Rachel. Yes, sir. Everyone mentioned in these reports who attempted to raise concerns. Rachel nodded. Deserves to be heard. The simple statement seemed to affect her deeply. Her eyes became glossy. For nearly a year, she had felt invisible. Now someone was finally listening. Marcus turned toward Noah. Thank you for recording. The young man swallowed hard. I almost didn't. Marcus nodded. But you did. Noah felt something lift from his shoulders. Because deep down, he had been questioning himself all evening, wondering if he had overstepped, wondering if he should have stayed out of it. Now he knew. Sometimes doing the right thing feels uncomfortable. That doesn't make it wrong. Marcus looked around the dining room. His voice remained steady. I appreciate everyone who chose honesty tonight. Several customers nodded. An older gentleman near the fireplace spoke up. Your mother deserves better. Marcus smiled faintly. She always has. The answer brought a small wave of emotion through the room. Because it was obvious. Marcus loved Evelyn deeply, not because she was related to him by blood, because she had earned that love every day of his life. Ashley listened to every word. Each one seemed heavier than the last. Eventually, she looked up. Her eyes were red, not dramatically, not theatrically, simply tired. For the first time all evening, she looked less like a confident employee and more like a frightened human being. "Mr. Carter." Marcus turned. Ashley struggled to continue. The words caught in her throat. Several attempts failed before she finally managed to speak. "I'm sorry." The restaurant remained silent. Marcus didn't respond. Ashley continued. "I know that doesn't fix anything." No response. "I know it sounds meaningless now." Still nothing. The silence forced her to keep talking, forced honesty, the kind she usually avoided. "I thought I knew who she was." The statement sounded pathetic the moment it left her mouth, because everyone understood the problem. She had never known who Evelyn was. She had simply assumed. Marcus looked at her quietly. Ashley lowered her eyes again. "I judged her. The truth hurt, but speaking it felt necessary." Before she said a single word, Rachel watched carefully. Noah listened. The customers remained completely still. Ashley took a shaky breath. "I was wrong." For the first time all night, nobody disagreed. Not because they lacked compassion, because it was true. Then something unexpected happened. The front doors opened. Rain-scented air swept through the restaurant. Every head turned. Evelyn Carter stepped inside. The room immediately changed. Not because she demanded attention, because she carried peace with her, even now, even after everything. Her coat remained damp from the rain. Her glasses still sat slightly crooked. The old canvas bag still hung from her shoulder. Nothing about her appearance had changed, and yet everyone saw her differently, because now they understood what Ashley never did. Character has nothing to do with clothing. Evelyn slowly approached. Marcus immediately moved toward her. "Mom." She smiled. "I'm fine." He shook his head. "I know." The exchange made several people smile. Ashley watched silently. Fear remained in her chest, but something else had joined it. Shame. Real shame. Not fear of losing her job. Fear of facing herself. Evelyn eventually turned toward her. The room seemed to hold its breath. Everyone expected anger, expected condemnation, expected consequences. Instead, Evelyn simply looked at her. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Ashley's composure broke. Tears appeared, small at first, then impossible to stop. "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. "I really am." The restaurant remained silent. Ashley wiped her eyes. "I don't know why I became this person." No one answered, because the question wasn't for them. It was for herself. Evelyn studied her carefully, the same way she once studied frightened children at Hope Table, the same way she listened to struggling families, patiently, without rushing. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "Do you know what hurts most?" Ashley shook her head. "It's not what happened to me." The answer surprised everyone, including Marcus. Evelyn continued. "It's knowing how many people may have walked away before me." The words landed heavily, because everyone knew she was right. The issue had never been a single evening, a single interaction, a single mistake. It was a pattern, a habit, a way of seeing people. Ashley closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She knew it too. Evelyn stepped closer. Not enough to intimidate, just enough to be heard. My question isn't whether you're sorry. Ashley looked up. The older woman's voice remained calm. My question is whether you're willing to change. Silence. Complete silence. Ashley stared at her, because that question felt far more difficult. Apologies are easy. Transformation is hard. Real change requires honesty, accountability, humility, all the things Ashley had spent years avoiding. The tears continued. Then she nodded. Slowly. Honestly. I want to. The answer wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic. But it felt genuine. Evelyn saw that. And so did everyone else. Marcus watched carefully, unsure where his mother was going with this. Then Evelyn did something nobody expected. Not Marcus, not Rachel, not Noah, not Ashley, not a single customer. She offered Ashley a chance, not forgiveness, not immediate absolution. A chance, nothing more, nothing less. You don't earn trust overnight. Ashley nodded. I know. You don't erase mistakes overnight. Another nod. I know. But every better future starts with one honest choice. The room remained completely still. Ashley cried openly now, not from humiliation. Relief. Because for the first time all evening, someone was treating her as a human being capable of becoming better. Not excusing her actions, not dismissing them, simply refusing to define her entirely by them. The lesson hit harder than punishment ever could. Marcus watched his mother carefully, then smiled. A small smile. The kind that only appeared when she reminded him who she was, who she had always been. The strongest person he knew, not because she won battles, because she transformed them. Ashley wiped her eyes. Why are you being kind to me? Evelyn looked around the room, then back at Ashley. Because someone was kind to me once when I didn't deserve it. The answer settled over everyone. Warm, unexpected, powerful. Outside, the rain finally began to ease. Inside Crown Oak, something had changed. Not just for Ashley, for everyone. And before the night ended, Evelyn Carter would make one final request. A request that would leave the entire leadership team speechless. A request that would transform this painful moment into something much bigger than any of them imagined. The rain had almost stopped. Only a few drops still tapped softly against the windows of Crown Oak Steakhouse. The storm clouds were breaking apart above Dallas. Moonlight began slipping through small openings in the sky. Inside the restaurant, nobody seemed eager to leave. The evening had become something far different than a dinner service. It had become a lesson, a reckoning. A moment people would remember for years. Marcus Carter stood beside his mother. Rachel remained nearby. Noah still held the phone that had preserved the truth. Ashley sat quietly in a chair near the hostess stand, exhausted from hours of emotion. No one spoke for a while. The silence felt peaceful now, not uncomfortable. Healing. Finally, Marcus looked toward his mother. What do you want me to do? The question surprised several people, because he wasn't asking as a billionaire or a CEO. He was asking as a son. The room waited for Evelyn's answer. She glanced around the restaurant, at the customers, the employees, the managers, the frightened young hostess, the exhausted Rachel, the nervous Noah, and finally Ashley. Then she smiled softly. I don't want revenge. Nobody seemed surprised. That sounded exactly like Evelyn Carter. Marcus nodded. What do you want? Evelyn took a slow breath. The answer came from somewhere deep, somewhere shaped by years of struggle, years of service, years of seeing people others ignored. I want fewer people to leave a place feeling the way I felt tonight. The words settled over the room. Simple, powerful, true. Marcus listened carefully. She continued. There are people all over this city. Her eyes drifted toward the rain-covered windows. People who walk into places carrying invisible burdens. Nobody interrupted. People who already feel unwanted. A pause. People who need opportunity more than judgment. Rachel lowered her eyes. Ashley quietly cried again. Evelyn looked at Marcus. If something good comes from this. Another pause. Then make it bigger than me. The restaurant fell completely silent. Marcus stared at her, then slowly smiled, because even after everything that happened, she was still thinking about strangers, still thinking about helping people, still being exactly who she had always been. The woman who raised him, the woman who shaped him, the woman who taught him that success only matters when it helps someone else. The leadership team arriving from Carter Holdings listened carefully. Several executives had entered quietly during the conversation. They expected discussions about lawsuits, terminations, public relations, damage control. Instead, they were listening to something entirely different. Vision, purpose, compassion. One executive finally spoke. What exactly do you have in mind, Mrs. Carter? Evelyn smiled. The answer surprised everyone. A training program. The executive blinked. A training program? She nodded. For people who need a second chance. The room listened. For people rebuilding their lives. Another pause. For people who've been overlooked. The idea grew with every sentence. Hospitality training, customer service training, job placement, mentorship, support, opportunity. A pathway forward. Not charity. Opportunity. Marcus understood immediately. His eyes brightened, because he could already see the future she was describing. The possibilities. The lives that could change. The doors that could open. The executives exchanged glances, not because the idea seemed impossible, because it seemed extraordinary. One executive quietly asked, "How large are we talking?" Marcus smiled. The answer came before Evelyn could speak. As large as it needs to be. The room fell silent again. No one doubted him. By sunrise the next morning, planning had already begun. Over the following months, Carter Holdings launched one of the largest workforce development initiatives in company history. Training centers opened. Scholarships were funded. Mentorship programs expanded. Community partnerships formed. Thousands of people applied. Hundreds received opportunities. Many found careers. Some found hope. Others found confidence for the first time in years. The initiative became known as the Evelyn Carter Opportunity Program. Not because she requested it, because everyone insisted. Hope Table Community Kitchen received significant funding. Its facilities expanded. The after-school reading center doubled in size. The classroom Evelyn helped paint became a full learning wing. Children filled the halls. Families found support. Volunteers gained resources. And on one wall near the entrance hung a framed crayon drawing. Miss Evelyn, my hero. Caleb's picture. Exactly where it belonged. Noah's video eventually became part of employee training across the company. Not as a punishment, as a reminder. A reminder that dignity matters. A reminder that assumptions have consequences. A reminder that every person deserves respect. Rachel Bennett was promoted. Not because of what happened that night, because of the integrity she showed long before anyone was watching. Her willingness to speak up became a model for leadership throughout the organization. The young hostess remained with the company too. She often spoke about the importance of courage, about the difference between seeing something wrong and doing something about it. And Ashley Morgan? Her path was harder. Real change usually is. She left Crown Oak, spent months rebuilding her life, months confronting uncomfortable truths, months learning things she had avoided for years. Growth came slowly, sometimes painfully, but it came. And surprisingly, one of the people who encouraged her most was Evelyn. Not because she excused what happened, because she believed people were capable of becoming better. 1 year later, on another rainy evening in Dallas, Crown Oak Steakhouse looked very different. The restaurant remained elegant, the food remained excellent, the atmosphere remained warm. But something important had changed. Near the entrance stood a bronze plaque. Simple, beautiful, impossible to miss. Visitors stopped to read it every day. The inscription contained just 4 words. Dignity has no dress code. Employees passed it every morning. Customers passed it every evening. No one forgot it. On that anniversary evening, a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. An older sedan. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive, just reliable. Evelyn Carter stepped out. She wore the same old coat, the same comfortable shoes, and hanging from her shoulder was the same canvas bag. Time had changed many things. Her appearance wasn't one of them. She entered the restaurant. The hostess looked up, immediately smiled. "Good evening, Mrs. Carter." Several employees noticed. Then more. Then more. One by one, people stood, not because she was the mother of a billionaire. Not because of her influence. Not because of her name. They stood because they respected her, because they knew who she was. A woman who had transformed pain into purpose, judgment into opportunity, humiliation into hope. Evelyn looked around. The room felt warm, alive, welcoming. Exactly as it should. Marcus emerged from a nearby dining room. He had been meeting with regional managers. The moment he saw her, he smiled. The same smile he wore as a little boy. "Mom." She laughed softly. "There you are." He hugged her, just as he had on that stormy night. The customers watched. Some recognized him. Many recognized her. The atmosphere felt different now. Not because wealth had entered the room, because goodness had. Marcus eventually pointed toward the plaque. Evelyn walked over, read the words again. Dignity has no dress code. For a long moment she simply stood there. Then she smiled. A quiet smile. The kind that comes from knowing something difficult produced something beautiful. Outside, the rain continued falling softly. Inside, families shared meals. Friends laughed together. Servers moved between tables. Life carried on, exactly as it should. And somewhere beyond the lights of Crown Oak, children studied in expanded classrooms. Workers trained for new careers. Families found opportunities. Lives moved forward. All because one woman refused to let pain have the final word. A worn coat can fool the eye. Old shoes can fool the eye. Even a canvas bag can fool the eye. But character always reveals itself eventually. Kindness always leaves fingerprints. And dignity depends on what a person wears, only on who they choose to be. If you had been sitting inside Crown Oak that night, what would you have done? Would you have looked away? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have stood up? Whatever your answer, remember this. The world changes when ordinary people choose courage over comfort, And sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody notices at first. The woman in the worn coat, the woman carrying a canvas bag, the woman who never stopped believing in people. Evelyn Carter. And maybe that's the image that stays with you long after this story ends. Not the slap, not the headlines, not even the billionaire son. Just Evelyn standing in front of that plaque that read, "Dignity has no dress code," wearing the same old coat she wore on the hardest night of her life. The real lesson here is about the price of judging people before we know them. Ashley Morgan didn't lose everything because of one bad moment. She lost it because she spent years deciding who people were before giving them a chance to show her. Today, think about one person you've already made up your mind about. Maybe it's a neighbor, a coworker, or even a stranger you pass every week. Give them one more look, one real conversation, one chance, because Evelyn Carter proved that the most important person in the room isn't always the one who looks important. If this story touched your heart, comment one below. And tell me this. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before someone got to know the real you? Thank you for being here with me today. And before you go, make sure you're back for the next story, because the next person everyone overlooks may be hiding a truth no one sees coming.
And the real lesson here is about the price of judging people before we know them. Ashley Morgan didn't lose everything because of one bad moment. She lost it because she spent years deciding who people were before giving them a chance to show her. Today, think about one person you've already made up your mind about. Maybe it's a neighbor, a coworker, or even a stranger you pass every week. Give them one more look, one real conversation, one chance, because Evelyn Carter proved that the most important person in the room isn't always the one who looks important. If this story touched your heart, comment one below and tell me this. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before someone got to know the real you? Thank you for being here with me today. And before you go, make sure you come back for the next story because the next person everyone overlooks may be hiding a truth no one see coming.